All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite warlock. Today, I want to kind of go off books a little bit and kind of talk to you about modern events. Okay. Modern events compared to the old days. First of all, I want you to take a look at a word. It's called an mechanism. Okay. And basically, what this is something that does not belong in modern times. Okay. If you think about taking a monk from, say, the second century and plopping them down in 2023, they would not understand anything that's going on. They wouldn't even know where to go or what to do, right? So, an anachronism is something that does not belong in this generation. It is something that is so old, it's out of date. It predates it. And believe me, sometimes I feel that way. I really do. I feel like I don't even belong in society because I don't understand a lot of things that are taking place. Things that people talk about. I don't understand it and I don't connect with it. So, but anyways, let's get down to business here. So understanding this term, this one little term, this one little definition, I want you to take a look at religion in general. I want you to take a look at politics. I want you to take a look at the news outlets. Okay. Now, one of the biggest things out there right now is the LBGT. Okay. Not really sure what the abbreviation is for that, but I do understand what it's about. It is a movement and what this movement's about. Um, Today I was on TikTok just scrolling down, having a laugh at some animal videos and stuff like that, but also some of these people, mostly women, doing weird things on camera, which I honestly don't understand myself, but why they do it. I think it's attention seeking. But I came across a video where the LBGT is now gunning for legal laws to be implemented for religious status. Okay. For religious status. And you have a Christian minister, a Zadian, a GCA, a JCI, Judo Christian Institution minister, a clergyman, jumping on here saying, you know, if you perform these acts, then the world will regurgitate you, basically, toss you out on your ass. Okay, the earth will reject you, basically. And it's funny because of the fact that if people paid more attention to history, you would realize that how literally how much religions and belief structures have changed in 2,500 years. You see, back in the second century, people looked to the Pharisees for guidance, especially in the time of Jesus Christi, Jesus Christ, the man, okay, where they gunned for him. And it's interesting because even then, they hated their brother, their kindred, okay? So, and it was always about drama back then. They wanted him to be removed because he was a danger. His radicalism, his thought process was a threat to the Pharisees and what they were teaching the public. Okay. Now let's skip through to the 10th century. The 10th century through the 14th century. The church had become well established. Now you have good versus evil, light versus dark, heaven versus hell. Okay. And anything not of the church was of the devil. Okay. It's the witch trials, the burning times, basically, where witches were persecuted and accused. Let's go to the 15th century. It was disbanded for about a century, at least until 1604. Now, in the 15th century, the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, and Catholicism in general had taken over and was established with politics, specifically that of kings. Okay. And people always went to the ministers, much like they did with the medicine men and women of tribes in African based cultures. They would go to shamans in European based or necromancers, such as the Hexa, the Strega, the Eshi, or the Aji. Okay, the accused women being the Aji. Okay, now they would go for advice. In this case, they're just going to the Catholics, Catholicism at its finest. But it wasn't until 1604 that the witch trials really kicked off and became the burning times. Those were drowned, hanged, burned at the stake. It didn't matter who it was. Okay, all the way up into politics and government officials. If you weren't protected by the queen or the king, the royal court, then you were basically fucked. Okay. So let's fast forward to the 1960s. In the 1960s, the commandments were added to. Okay. The First Amendment was being freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Okay. What makes up a freedom of religious perspective is you have to have doctrine, you have to have a following, and you have to have a foundation. Okay. But in 1964 to 1967, the Civil Rights Act of Titles VI and VII were added on to for religious protection rights for those of religions. Okay. This basically allows you, the individual, to decide, okay, this is my practice. This is what I need to uphold my own personal rights on the job and in the communities. Okay. So up until the 1990s, 2000s area, you had same sex marriage. Anything of gays and lesbians, for an example, were considered to be not or considered to be illegal for them to marry. Okay. Unfortunately, this has nothing to do with religion. Okay. So here we are in 2023. Roe versus Wade has been removed from play, which basically um, was added on to where it is illegal for a woman to have an abortion. Okay, which goes against the 1010 Congress Act, which basically states that no government foundation has a right to interfere in what a woman does with her body. Okay. Second of all, it protects women and allows them to either decide to conceive a child or to abort it based off health and psychosis of the mind. Okay. Safety wise, basically. All right. So by getting rid of Roe versus Wade, you opened up the door for this to go on. Okay. So here it is. Now we're in 2023, February. Okay. Now you have ministers coming on talking on camera for talk shows and news outlets, saying that the earth will regurgitate you if you go down that path of the, say, for example, being bi, gay, tri, bi, whatever. Okay. And in this case, we're looking at the LBGT movement. Okay. And that's all it is a movement. Okay. And now they're talking they need legal laws to be implemented for their protection in religious circles. First of all, what did we just cover here? Okay. Freedom of religion, First Amendment. 13th and 14th Amendments protect you from persecution, especially if you're female or male for that matter. Okay. Now, the only religious foundation to date that has anything to do with gays, lesbians, and hating them, basically saying you're going to go to hell if you do this, is the Hebraic systems. Okay. The Hebraic systems, this is mainstream Christianity. This is Catholicism, both Roman and mainstream Catholicism, Judaism, Hebrewism, and Islam. Okay. These are the only foundations that says that being gay is a sin. Okay. It doesn't matter if you're asexual, tri, bi, whatever. It's considered a sin by these religions. So now you have women sitting there talking about having sex on their periods and all this stuff, during their menstrual cycle. Number one, that's a choice. That is a choice for you to do. That's why it's called free will. The founding fathers of America made all men equal. You have a right to believe whatever the fuck you want to believe in. Okay? You want to believe in Satan? Go right ahead. You want to believe in ancient gods such as Anubis, Inti, Ra, Hades, whatever. It's your choice. It's your choice through your religion and your religious belief to do so. But it has nothing to do with your sexual preference. It has nothing to do with it. So you don't really need laws to be established for you to practice any religious foundation, philosophy, or whatever. If you are lesbian, gay, tri, bi, whatever, pan, whatever, it does not matter because it has nothing to do with a religious affiliation. The only ones, like I said, that have an issue with that and teaches that it is a sin is the Hebraic systems. This is the JCI, the Judo Christian Institutions. Now, as I said at the beginning of this, history is there for you to learn by. Okay? It's just sheer laziness that you choose not to learn from history. It is your choice not to rise up and stand up for your personalized rights. You allow the government to implement rules, tear down the United States Constitution like it doesn't exist, to control you because now you have them attacking not only religious foundations and beliefs, you have them attacking the gun laws, which every American has the right to bear arms. You have your legal right when dealing with law enforcement not to say a goddamn word. You don't even have to answer them. Okay? So you have the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, which basically tells you that cops have to tell you why they've pulled you over, why they've been there at your house. They are legally mandated by federal law to do so. Okay? And now you have the 13th and 14th Amendments being attacked as well. Okay? Through sexual orientation, sexual rights, reproductive rights, all of this shit is being attacked and dismembered. Religious foundations have and rights and laws have been rewritten countless times since the 1960s. Okay. I think the last one was under the administration of our former president, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he did some kind of minor adjustment there. But when it comes to news outlets, you don't even need proof. You can pay for them to do an article on you. They sit there and they can run their mouth on whatever because it's considered to be a fear tactic. They are a mouthpiece to the governments, and the governments work for the church. Again, if you'd learned your history, you would know all this. Have we learned nothing in the last 2 years? Have we learned nothing from the last 2 decades? How about the last 3 decades or the last four? I mean, think about this. President Biden just said, and I quote, that they're sending about 30,000 tanks over to Ukraine. There is news outlets stating that NATO has scrambled their jets to intercept Russian planes that have no identification markers, no flight paths, no flight plans going from the Baltic up to Norwegian territories. You have China invading Taiwan. And yet, America sending all our troops over to these other countries to help them out, such as the Middle East. Let's see. Crime rate is at an all-time high in the United States. We have the highest incarcerated communities. We've got the highest inflation rates in the world, the highest amount of homeless people. And you want to continue sending our money, our technology across seas. What's that old expression? How can you help others if you can't help yourself? Think about that for just a moment. If you can't clean up your own backyard, what makes you think you can clean up somebody else's? Think about that for just a minute. So you got all of this shit coming down right now. You got Christianity literally on the rise, spewing their little doctrines around, talking shit about your sexual preferences, about aligning with Israel, but yet everybody is aligning against Israel because they have the resources that Israel does not. Hmm. You talk about love thy neighbor, and yet you wage war. Hmm. Interesting. What's that old expression in the Bible? Any man that adds or takes away from this book, the same shall be done out of the book of life. That's Revelations chapter 22, verses 18 and 19, depending on the translation, because you got a lot of different types of Bibles out there. But let's go to Matthew's for an example. Let's go to Matthew's chapter 7, verses 1 and 2. Judge not that ye not be judged. And before you can remove the speck from your brother's eye, you must first remove the big wooden log from your own. Hmm. But yet, you feel the need to go out there and judge, raise drama, and place legal laws in place and remove them at whims just because it's all about money. It's all about money. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Hmm. And it's always the little guy or woman that gets caught in the crossfire. Nobody really gives a shit about the little guy or woman. Those who make 75 to $150,000 a year have more leeway than those on, say, Social Security. Or how about those who live in federally low income based housing? You got corporations having more and more control, like something out of Resident Evil. I don't know about you, but I've seen those movies. I've seen how the enemy of your nations will take your technology and use it against you. I mean, think about 9/11 for an example. They used your planes to commit an act of terrorism. You set up more and more technology, and they're learning to use it against you. Hmm. That would be, it's kind of idiotic, don't you think? It's idiotic because you're not learning from history. You're letting the governments rule your life without even having a clue about your own religious freedoms or your own personalized rights as a civilian, as a citizen of your country. You don't even know your legal rights. And yet, those who speak out are considered terrorists, devil worshippers, and enemies. I wonder where that term comes from. I mean, my own son went to his grandmother and said he was upset because his other grandmother said that I was evil because I'm not a Christian. Hmm, I'm evil. And that really upset my son, who's 5 years old. And this is coming from a woman, a zealot, that rules her family with an iron fist. What she says goes. So if she says you're the devil and need to be put down, the entire family will hate you. And that goes to the friends of your relative. In this case, my son's mother's friends, who used to be my friends until I became the enemy. On top of that, you have former government officials, Marines, starting their own companies and talking about your rights, the constitutional rights of each citizen, suddenly being branded a terrorist. Huh. You can look this up. It's right on YouTube, by the way. You can go underneath TikTok and see all kinds of videos on this. But yet, everything I find interesting is that these so called experts are Christians. Why don't you bring a Satanist onto your show and ask them about Satanism, what it is and what it is not? Why don't you bring a necromancer on your shows, on your news outlets, and ask what necromancy is? Hmm. But no, they're not going to do that because that would tarnish the church's reputation. It would tarnish and diminish their power and authority in this world. In the meantime, you got idiots running the government, like Biden, giving 30,000 tanks to Ukraine. Have you not seen Red Dawn? Not just the old version, but the new one, starring that guy that played Thor and the guy from that Nickelodeon show that played his kid brother. I forget the name of the show. My nephew was big on that show. But here it is. You're not going to learn because you don't want to. Laziness is an excuse. If you want things to change for the better, then all citizens need to realize you have the right to tell the government to fuck off. You have a right to take back your country. That is why the United States Constitution is there. The Fifth Amendment, for an example, the Patriot Act, Fifth, Fifth freedom allows any U.S. citizen to rise up and tell the government to go fuck itself. Think of the Boston Tea Party as a prime example. The biggest kickoff of the American Revolution. Do we learn nothing from the Civil War? And this is another topic. Why are you teaching your kids racism? If it's supposedly done and over with, why does each generation consider it about race, class, creed? Hmm. I don't see why it matters. I really don't. If you want to practice a religion, do so. If you want to educate yourself on history, do so. You want to talk about your independent and individual rights and to stick up for them, then you must do your homework. You must learn your rights. You can't be divided. I mean, hell, even to choose a scripture from the Bible, and I'm going to do this from a Christian perspective, is if Satan begets Satan, then his house is divided. That's in the Gospels. Okay, you cannot love one and hate the other because you'll either love the one and hate the other, or love the other and hate the one. Okay, so how does this country, the country of the United States of America, or say China, Russia, whatever, decides, well, the government says we have to go to war. If we don't, our family gets imprisoned. You get labeled a terrorist. Hmm. If you don't agree with your politicians, remove them. You have that right to do so. Look at your laws. Every country worldwide has laws, both federal, state, and local laws. Okay? Even from a religious perspective, you have laws, you have rights. They're just named something different. But you have to be the one to step up and do it. You have to step up. You can't divide in segments. You got the Satanic Temple going around suing people left and right, but yet they claim publicly we're doing this for all Satanists. But yet in their newsletters, they're saying our members' rights are being violated. Two different things. You claim the government claims to want peace, but yet you're going to war and you're giving our technology to people to wage war. Wow. And yet all these military types are sitting there saying, well, we follow the art of war. Well, even Sun Tzu said that everything has to be unified. The people, the military, and the government. Hmm. Otherwise, it's segregation. It's denominations. And that's basically what every religion worldwide is today. It is religious segregation. It's different people believing different things. The only difference is Christians have more rights than those of the left-hand path, and they get away with it. They can beat their children with belts, and yes, I've seen that firsthand. And ironically, the child being beaten was an African American child from a Baptist man that was white. Yet the biggest thing is the law enforcement can look at child protective services and say, hey, this child is repeatedly being abused. You need to step in. They won't do it. But yet, if somebody who's a counselor sits there and says somebody's a Satanist, oh my God, we got to step in. We got to hound that person. Meantime, this child gets murdered by her family. This happened about 5, 6 years ago, 2 towns over, or a couple towns over, rather, from where I'm currently at. Ironically, people don't see this because they don't want to see it. They want to be a part of something. They want to just go with what's the most popular thing these days. And that's the sad part. But the biggest thing out there right now is Ukraine, China, and the LBGT. Hilarious. When are you people going to learn and wake up? It's all Christianized propaganda. Have a good one.